Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Welcome, Myron.
Good morning.
Good morning. Is it morning where you are?
No, it's nighttime. 7 o'clock at night, or just after 7 o'clock at night. Yeah, I'm a far way ahead of you. Put it that
Yes.
way.
Well, thank you for being here with us on 7 o'clock on a Friday evening. And we appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, honestly.
Well, today we have Myron Edwards. We were just talking, we're categorizing his books as urban fantasy. They're set in a contemporary world, but the main character, not Myron, I don't know if the main character is you, but meets several fantastical beings. It's a trilogy, correct?
Yeah, it is. It's a trilogy. Yeah.
And go ahead and jump in. The first book is
I didn't
Mistress of the Rock, correct?
I didn't set out for it to be a trilogy. It's just the way that it ended up on the first book. And I thought, I can't end it with this particular book. And I wanted to follow the story on. And the book two took me into book three to kind of complete it and get it out of my system. So that's how it ended.
That does happen. So Mistress of the Rock is the first book. Tell us about the main character. Set us up.
The main character is a guy called Richard Cole, who's an army corporal, and it takes place. The initial action takes place in the first Gulf War, and that's around what 1980, something around that time. And that's where he sort of fantasizes about this woman that he sees after he's gone through traumatic sort of action on that particular time. That it focuses the action on the struggle that the Iraqis had trying to get back from Highway 80 to Iraq. So after the invasion, all of the people, not just the soldiers, not just the Revolutionary Guard, but it was also the people who had gone into Kuwait, who would then had to get out of Kuwait, and they were all in a column. And this particular action takes place when the Americans see that this is a way to get at the Revolutionary Guard, and they attack this Highway 80. And it's a massacre. It's basically a massacre. And Richard is watching it with his sergeant. And they're just observers. That's all they are. But it has such an effect on him that he starts to suffer from PTSD. I don't want to spoil the introduction as such, but it's then that he imagines, or he thinks he imagines, that somebody has come to rescue him. Now, he had a fascination with Cyprus, and particularly Aphrodite's rock. And from there, he decides that he wants to return to Cyprus for an anniversary. And he goes back to Cyprus with his wife. They meet up with the guy who was in Kuwait with him, a helicopter pilot called Peter Cole. And basically, it's a reunion. So the reunion takes place with Peter Cole and his wife. And what happens is that Peter Cole decides he will take them on a trip, but he's going to take them on a trip in a helicopter. And that, of course, brings all the memories of what Richard experienced back again. And so the story unfolds that Richard believes that what he sees in the water, and in many ways it's the same sort of thing for me, because this is what I saw, which in point of fact started the whole thing off. I saw an image of a figure in the water, a female figure, when I went to Aphrodite's Rock, and it was on a poster, believe it or not. I've never been able to find the poster, but I have been able to find some pictures, and they're on my YouTube section on the website where I've got the books listed. It gives you an indication of what I sort of imagined, and it's a figure of a woman under the water taken from the air. So that was the, if you like, the catalyst that started me thinking about what I could do and create the book from there. Richard becomes obsessed with the idea of the figure in the water, but he not only becomes obsessed with it, he basically starts to create a new, if you like, visitors attraction, which he uses to be able to stimulate people going to the rock, because people go to the rock, but there's not much to see there apart from the actual rocks themselves. And I don't want to be denigrated to the actual tourist office, but basically they don't do enough with it. They have one cafe across the road from the actual rocks themselves, whereas what I was trying to do with the book was to basically say, you have an opportunity here. It is a World Heritage Site. You could basically try and make it a much more viable tourist attraction, and using the figure under the water, which is what Richard creates, he makes it into a viable tourist attraction. So that sort of entrepreneurial thing comes through. But he keeps seeing images of this woman that he saw that long time ago in Highway 80, and that in many ways becomes his obsession, not just through his PTSD, but because he believes that the woman that he's actually seeing could be the goddess. So that's a summary of what the story is about. And then it goes on from there, where he becomes slightly obsessed by what he's seeing, how he actually basically has to decide between his wife and his family, or does he want to go with the goddess? So it's the kind of eternal triangle, if you like, but from a Greek perspective.
I was wondering if this was going to cause problems with his wife and his family, because to become too obsessed with anything kind of messes with your family life a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, his wife doesn't understand, and other people don't understand that he's the only one that's seeing this happening to him. And because of that, all the events that happen while he's sort of consolidating his position in terms of, well, I'm seeing this. Why can't anybody else see this? From that side, and that sort of turns into a passion, and the passion becomes the love story. Now, the love story is it a goddess, or is it his imagination? Does she actually exist? From that perspective. And of course, everybody else dismisses what he's seeing, and thinking that the PTSD has now taken over. But he encounters her on the beach for real, and from that time on, she basically weaves a spell, because she's quite hypnotic in terms of her possession of him. And that is really what starts the conflict between his wife his family, and his goddess.
Interesting. So the goddess is a little bit like a siren who's entrapped or entranced him, it
Yeah,
sounds
well,
like.
yeah, if you're following Greek mythology, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I see the second book is called Scylla the Revenge. Who can you tell us who Scylla is, or does that give too much away?
No, no, no. You've heard the expression between a rock and a hard place? Okay. There were two cryptoids. One was Sky. I can't remember the other one, but the other one was a sister. They were on two sides of the rock, or two rocks. Okay, so they are cryptoids, which means they're creatures of the sea. Um, and basically, what they did was very much like the sirens themselves. They would seduce sailors um, through the rocks, um, and then from there they would get them to crash against the rocks and devour them. That's the story in that respect. But because of what happens in the first book, Aphrodite calls upon Scylla to wreak revenge for what happened to her. So there's all these different events happening, and of course, at that stage, with all these mysterious disappearances which happens, um, the situation becomes that Richard has to now return to Cyprus. He makes an excuse. He has to go back to see Peter, but he knows what he's got to do, and he's got to try and defeat the Scylla. That's what he's got to try and do. And of course, in between that, you've still got Aphrodite who's teasing him and everything else, and her real identity, as far as the guy who initially put everything together with the construction of the what shall I call it? The construction of the site at Aphrodite's Rock. He reveals his true identity, which is surprising when it comes the way it does. And because of that, there is a connection that what happens to Richard is that he has to recognize that the only way that he can, if you like, compensate for what's happened is he has to basically battle Aphrodite and the Skylar. That's basically what the story is. What happens to him is because Aphrodite's obsession with Richard is based on her own obsession with her, I suppose, lover is the best way to explain it. The lover being Adonis, and Adonis is Aphrodite's very special man. I can't think of a better expression. And because of that, the obsession with Richard comes to fruition. She thinks Richard is Adonis.
The
So
plot thickens.
yeah, so the plot thickens. And if you like, the conclusion to that is that at the end of it, there's a choice. There is a choice that they have to make. And that choice leads them to a position where it's really difficult to talk like this because I don't want to give the story.
No, you don't want to give it away. We're intrigued now. You can stop.
At the same time, I want to elaborate on what I'm saying. Basically, he has to make a choice. And so the choice is, what do I do now? And actually, Zeus then gets involved. And from that point, the conflict, if you like, becomes escalated. So everybody should read the book. I can't express it any more than that.
Right.
Um,
Well, whenever you get Zeus involved in anything, there's going to be a lot of things happening. So,
yeah, definitely. As I say, I've mixed mythology with contemporary themes. So from that perspective, you can understand um, Greek mythology is massive. You've got Odyssey and everything else about coming through. Um, if I would have been lucky enough, and unfortunately I wasn't, due to financial situation that happened in Cyprus, I was on the verge of starting to make a film of Mistress of the Rock, which, if it had been successful, would have led to follow-ups, series two and series three. So, but it didn't. It never worked out, unfortunately, because of the financial crisis.
so you said the book was inspired by this vision of this woman under the water that you had. Were you interested in Greek mythology before that, or did you do a lot of research after that?
No, my Greek mythology basically was Jason and the Argonauts when I was about 12. um, and some of the Greek stories that they've turned into films, like those kind of things, like Hercules and that sort of thing. Um, no, I didn't have any, shall we say, background in Greek mythology and at all. But in fact, I had to research quite deeply to find out all the different myths and stories that were associated with Aphrodite, and also how they came together with modern day mythology, from that perspective. So yeah, it was fascinating to do the research, but it took a long time to do the research. And I found out things I didn't even know, like um, the idea of Aphrodite in the first instance is that it's called Aphrodite because it means Afro from the phone. That's where she was born. She was born from the phone. But the consensus is that, well, and the fact of the story is, it was the two gods that were arguing, and one, I think Cronus cut off the genitals of one of the gods, threw it into the water, and from that action, the foam bubbled up, and out comes Aphrodite. So that's why she's called Aphrodite, from the foam. I wouldn't have known that had I not done the research, from that perspective. And when you then do the research, you can build it into the story. But Trisha, I can't write unless I can see the action. Do you know what I mean? I write in pictures. That's the best way to describe it. Because if I can see the action, I can then put the words to it. So, in the first instance, when I wrote Mistress of the Rock, I wrote it as a screenplay.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah, so I wrote it as a screenplay because I wanted to get it out of my system. And after I got it out of my system, I then decided that I could turn it into a book because I'd already got all the action. So all I needed to do was to pad it, from that point of view, with language. So that's what happened. And as you get the action, which is probably the most difficult thing, you're then in a situation where you can combine the words that are spoken with the action that you've created.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't talked to many people who started with a screenplay and then wrote a novel. I mean, a lot of times people adapt their novels to screenplays, so that's an interesting way to go
Yeah,
about. Right.
I did it the other way around. So
Mhm. I very much write like that too. I'm always visualizing what is happening in the scene, and that's how I and then I interpret it into the words, I guess. So
Yeah,
Very much a visual writer. So yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I don't know how people write without being able to see what they're writing. You know, in other words, like that, you know, you write in little boxes, your action and things like that. You write in vignettes, and you know, from that perspective. But I learned that when I was in the advertising business, that you create little vignettes and put them into the commercial. So that's what that's what you do.
Selling a story sells, right? So
Yeah.
what's next for you? Are Richard and Julie's lives going to continue, or do you have a whole nother idea coming up?
Well, if we go into book three, it's really all about Julie, because well, how shall I do this without revealing the secrets? Um, Her husband, Richard, is in a precarious position which she has to try and extradite him from. Now, that's the best way I can tell you.
So she gets sucked in, and eventually she has to believe this is real.
Yeah, no, she actually she knows that Aphrodite is real because there is a point in the first book where she actually reveals herself to
Oh, okay.
me as well. So she knows that, and she knows how vindictive Aphrodite is, and she knows that in order to get her husband back, she has to go somewhere where she's the only one that can go in.
Ooh. Intrigue and interest here.
Yeah.
My interest is piqued.
And actually, book three, I had to do a lot of research on because it involves so many different aspects of the story and so many different parts to the story where the mythology takes over, basically. There's more mythology in that book three than there is in all of the others put together.
That sounds like a lot of research and a lot of work. I'm always intrigued when an author like really dives in and gets to know the mythology or the background lore and then spins it into a little bit of something new. Do you feel like you created a new bit of lore as well?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because I was learning as well as I was doing the research, but I was also adapting the research to the characters, and that actually made the story much more viable in terms of, you know, I got a scene, for example, where um, uh, Julie is confronted with a decision, and she doesn't know if she can go ahead and do it, but she understands that if she doesn't do it, she'll lose Richard. So she has to confront that particular situation, and that's where it becomes very difficult because she's putting her own life in jeopardy, and there are consequences to what she has to do as well. But
So
again,
this
I can't I can't
no,
tell
the
you.
stakes are no, we don't want to know the ending. The stakes are definitely high. I can tell that. So you
It's like
talked about, right, you talked about writing the book because of this vision you have, and that, a little bit could be that you feel like they could do more around tourism of this rock or information or in
yeah.
that area, but also talk about like what you want people to bring away from the book. Are there themes, or is this, I'm writing an escape for you to enjoy?
I mean, originally it was written as a beach book, you know, from that perspective, where Cyprus is a great island. It's got seas, it's got sunshine nearly all year round, you know, from that perspective. You can go sometimes in the winter, for example, you can go water skiing in the morning or go snow skiing in the afternoon.
Oh,
So it has that sort of perspective. Um, and it has that attraction as well. But depends on where you are in different parts of the island. But the main sort of historical sites, there are a few. They have the tourist office has attractions where you can follow the path of Aphrodite, or you can follow the path of Zeus or whatever. And there are various attractions that are done like that. But my thought was, if they were to adapt the plan that I've tried to do, it would bring more people in. And if it had been able to be turned into a movie, it certainly would have brought a new audience to the island. Because most people come to Cyprus, and I'm not being derogatory to the island or anything like that, but they come for the sunshine, and they come for they don't come from the history, they can, and in many ways the kids aren't taught as much about the history, and I think that's a great shame. They have a remarkable history that from all the different Romans all the way through to the French, the British, everything from that perspective. And yeah, it's a fascinating island, and it has all these legends to it as well, which makes it, something that people could do other than just sitting on the beach all day, from that point of view.
Right.
So
For those of us who like to walk around and look at everything, I'm seeing the Myron Edwards Cyprus tour.
Well, I'd call it the Mistress tour, don't know. Oh, no,
Okay.
is not the right thing to say. No, the Mistress is a rock tour, yeah, definitely.
Interesting.
Um,
Fun.
no, um, it's a pity that the film wasn't taken up, because I think that would have made a whole difference. I mean, look at the movies like you mentioned, the Da Vinci Code. The number of people that went to Scotland to see the church in Scotland where, the kind of action takes place, or went to the Louvre to see the Mona Lisa and things like that. But generated through the book, not just ordinary tourists, from that side. So yeah, I think that. Well, I mean, even things like Harry Potter, they go to King's Cross Station to see the platform and things like that. And it's all emanated from the books and from the films as well. So, if somebody had shall we say, the insight to think, oh, well, these books could actually work as a movie, then that would be my achievement, from that point of view.
Yes, Star Wars fans flocked to, was it the island off Scott Ireland, I think, where they,
And
where,
people
yes,
went to New Zealand because of Lord of the Rings,
right.
So exactly. So yeah, I mean, one thing follows the other, from that side. But you need somebody to believe in it. That's not just you believing in it, but you need other people believing in it and thinking, I think he's got something here, from that point of view.
I could go to Cyprus and see Aphrodite in the water. That would
Yeah,
be cool.
yeah. I'm not saying that at the moment, it's too cold, but when spring comes and when summer comes, the people go down there. They don't have a beach. It's like a stony type of beach, so it's not the most comfortable area. But the waters can be very dangerous. There are people that have drowned there as well, because the tides are and the currents are very vicious. Um, I do mention that in the book as well, that the currents are actually, very dangerous.
Well, it seems like the perfect setting to read your book. You have to go there and read all the books, and then you would be completely
Well,
immersed in the experience.
it would be nice. I have the difficulty that the only way that I can get my books, if you like, into circulation is to use online, because living in Cyprus, if I want to send books from the US, where my publisher is Rock Hill Publishing, um, he he has to send them over to me, and it costs more than what the books do, to postage. So I only have the opportunity, like talking to you, Trisha, to be able to try and promote the books through things like Amazon. There are, if you go onto Google, you'll find my name with all the different shops that do it. But I have dialysis, so I can't travel. So that's my problem, because I would like to go out on a book tour, in the States, but because of my dialysis, I can't travel.
Well, we're glad you could be here with us today, and tell everyone your website. And Mistress of the Rock is the first book. Is there a series name, or is it just Mistress?
No, my website is my name. It's www.myronedwardsbooks.com. It's very simple. And everything is on there. I put all the information on there. I've put the YouTube video, so if you want to see what she looks like under the water. You got to remember, this is 5,000 years ago that she was supposedly, coming out of the water from that point of view. So if the figure doesn't look complete, that's why it's 5,000 years old, and she's in the water. But there is definitely a figure that you can see. Well, really, it's a case of, if you go onto Google, you can see where all the books are listed. And the great thing is that if you do decide you want to read the books, or you want to read the trilogy, it's always great to have a review. I've got quite a few reviews on there, but it's always great to have a review. And you probably know that yourself, that, people appreciating all the effort that you put into writing it, because it is a very lonely sort of occupation, if you like. And there's a great deal of sacrifice as well. Just to get that thing out of your head.
Yes. Well, I think fans of Greek mythology, as well as fans of urban fantasy and maybe magical realism, will definitely be intrigued by Mistress of the Rock, Skyla the Revenge, and Julie's Odyssey. So thank you so much, Myron, for being here. And I hope you'll come back next time you write another book.
Thank you, Trisha. Thanks for the opportunity, and stay warm.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Trisha Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.